Welcome. This is Maria Ferrer, Project Manager of Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. We're here today with author Elvira Gonzalez, and we're going to talk about her upcoming book, Hurdles in the Dark.
Yes.
Hurdles in the Dark. Elvira is an author. She's founder of Writers Incubator, which she'll tell us a little bit about. She's also a vegan athlete and a former professional track and field coach. Okay, so Elvira, welcome. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
Tell us about your upcoming book.
Yes, my upcoming book is a young adult memoir about growing up in the border in Laredo, Texas. And the book starts in 2008. I was 16 years old and I ended up in juvenile, and I thought, I don't belong here. How can I possibly end up here? And soon I quickly realized from meeting the other girls in juvenile that we were all the same as far as having circumstances that kind of didn't help us propel us forward, and situations that were pretty hard as far as like socioeconomic backgrounds, but also traumatic experiences that happened. And that made me think maybe it's because we didn't have the resources to kind of deal with that is why we're in this environment at the detention hall. And that motivated me to write a book. I thought, how can I shed light in this situation for kids, for parents or authorities to kind of figure this out, as far as, maybe the reason why we end up here is because we don't have the resources or the parenting or the guidance. So I thought, okay, I'll write a book. I never read a book in my life, but it sounds kind of interesting. And I started writing Hurdles in the Dark there in juvenile. And that's been my mission. I'm now 30 years old, and that was when I was 16. And so that's where the book starts, and then it kind of takes you all the way forward. I don't want to give too much of the book, but I talk about my relationship with my mom and the beautiful aspects of living in the border, where you have the Mexican culture and the American culture and integrating those things together, but also the Spanglish. I grew up speaking Spanglish, and I really want the book to be very authentic. So I'm able to weave in the Spanglish in there for those who don't speak Spanish. I think you will learn a lot. I don't believe there will be a glossary in there, but I really want to be authentic with the book and the narrative, because it is from the perspective and lens of a young girl narrating this world, and not my perspective as an adult looking back. So that kind of encompasses the book, but also using what my mom taught me growing up, and finding a way out of that situation. I wanted to be the first one in my family to get a college degree. I didn't know anyone who was ever gone to a 4-year school. So I'm thinking, well, how do I do that? I don't know anything about loans and about money, but I'm like, I'm really good at sports. And if I just focus in track, something about running over hurdles attracted me to that, even though I'm 5'1". And my coaches were like, there's no way they're gonna get you a scholarship. You're 5'1". I'm like, well, maybe it hasn't been done, but why can I be the first one? So that kind of motivated me. And then I was, Googling, YouTubing how to run hurdles and learning the physics behind it, and hurdling in the dark at 5:30 in the morning before the security caught me, because it's a liability to not have a coach and be practicing. So that's where the title Hurdles in the Dark came about. But as I was competing in track, there was so many obstacles that I had to deal with. My mom was a victim of a crime, so there was like a trial happening, and coaches who were saying, you're 5'1", you're not fast enough. And so the book kind of it's a journey of my young Elvira self through all these obstacles that got in the way, but it still pushed me to accomplish my goal in getting a scholarship. And then I was ranked 13th in the US and got my full scholarship, and I ended up going to school in San Antonio at the University of Incarnate Word. And yeah, there's a lot there, but that kind of encompasses what the book is about. And I don't want to spoil the book, but I think that kind of says what the book is about.
I think there's an old saying about the way that you get back at people who always put you down, or who always say, oh no, you can't, is to become a success, which is what you've done. You've become a successful woman. And now your book, your story is going to be out there. And you were lucky enough to get a 6-figure deal. I mean, that's a very, very big deal. This is your first book. So, do you feel vindicated? How do you feel? I mean, you are a success. You are a walking success.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I'm still pinching myself sometimes because I believe it and I don't believe. I'm like, I believe. I thought that this was going to happen. I'm like, it has to happen. It's one of those things where I use my sports and the discipline to get this book out. And like I said, since I was 16, I promised these girls in juvenile, I'm like, I'm going to tell your story. I'm going to write your story. And they're like, yeah, okay. You know, they call me the smart ruca. They're like, the smart ruca is going to write a book about us. And I'm like, I promise you, I'm going to figure out a way. And I moved to New York. So I've had so much help here in New York with the support, my former writing workshop, my teacher, Charles Selsberg, who runs a writing workshop, and Devil Wears Prada came out of his own workshop. So there's been so many successful books, but I feel like the people have helped me along the way. And it was just a matter of time, I think, that someone believed in the project, and being resilient, and like I said, using sports experience kind of helped me propel forward. And then submitting my book proposal to the publishers happened from one day to the next, from sending my book on a Wednesday night, the book proposal, and then Thursday morning we got a book deal offer, a preempt deal. So basically, like, how much money do you want to get off the market? And for me, I was like, I really want a 6-figure book deal. That's been my whole mindset. And to get a 6-figure book deal, there's so many ways to go about it. And I think for me, I'm like, I don't have the followers. I didn't study writing. You know, writing is a really hard thing for me. So how do I go about this? And it's really positioning yourself and having endorsements and all that stuff. So I cultivated that in New York, and it took a long time, but seeing that kind of gave me that validation, the stamp of approval, like, okay, I finally did it. It took so long, but it was worth it. And yeah, I feel very lucky. And I also have a great team at Macmillan. They're great editors and they believe in the project. And I'm very excited to work with them, but also excited to have the book out in a few months, hopefully.
Yes, that's very exciting. And so you use your expertise, your athleticism in sports to gain, your freedom and everything. And usually that happens, we read a lot about that, about men, men who are baseball players, who are basketball players, football players, so it's usually the guys that are getting, all these deals and stuff. As a woman, were there other women who helped you, who encouraged you, who told you, don't you dare give up?
My mother, and that's kind of where I'm working at on my last edits of my book. I'm like, my mother, because I look back and I was just talking to my publishers right before I was talking to you, and I want to highlight that because I think it's my mom who pushed me to be the best. She also didn't have a great upbringing with her situation. But she worked really hard. She was a bartender, and she would always tell me, "Go prove them wrong." So, since I was little, and I think that kind of helped me become the woman that I am today. In the back of my head, I hear my mom, telling me like, "Do you think that's a good idea or not?" If someone says you can't do it, prove them wrong with your actions. So, yeah, I think that kind of played a lot in my childhood, but also as an adult now. And yeah, I think a lot of the times it's stories about men, and it's true because I thought about that many times. But women are as resilient as men, and I think those stories need to be told because a lot of women are so inspiring, and a lot of women did help me get to where I'm at today, and I have to thank them because I don't know, without them, I don't know if I'd be here where I'm at today. I'm in New York, and I'm living comfortably, and I have all these opportunities. So I have to thank the women in my life for helping me get this far.
Yes. And mommy's always first.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So tell us about, I know that you said that you had problems with your writing and everything, but you founded Writers Incubator, and now you have a beautiful program where you help, people in juvenile detentions and in prisons to write, to tell their story. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and I think there is a misconception that I think it's a misconception that people think that you have to be an amazing writer to get your book out there, but we have editors for that, right? So I think it's being able to tell your story, and I think a lot of people are able to tell their story very comfortably speaking it, but writing it is very different. And so for us, we teach people just to, you can record the way you're speaking and just transcribe that. It becomes very natural. I think when people are very like they're writing and they're having these writer's block, I think a lot of it we kind of try to push ourselves to have these beautiful, elegant words, but if it's very easy the way you're speaking, I think it just comes off much a better and easier to read. And I think that was my biggest problem. Like, I have to sound very smart because, you know, I grew up in this environment where no one went to school, and I, you know, I have a very thick accent when I speak, and I hope that doesn't come off if I, you know, write in Spanglish. But then later on, I realized, you know, you just write the way you speak, and even if people don't understand it, there's a beautiful thing about cultural dialect and all that stuff, that you don't have to force it and try to kind of sound, you know, smart, right? So that's something that I learned. And a lot of the people that come from the prisons and the juvenile halls that we work with, because a lot of them do come and they're like, hey, I want to tell my story and I want to publish my story. They all have amazing stories. And a lot of them are not writers. I think most of the people we work with are not writers, for sure. They will tell you that. But the most important thing I would say about that is it's all about packaging the writer as a person, because that's the most important thing, right? Like, the publishers now care so much about the person, what they've done, what their story is about, not so much, I think, the writing. And when you work on the book proposal, which we worked a lot on with these writers, it's like, who are you to tell a story? What have you experienced that you're like, you know, you're the right person to tell the story. We had a guy who is the youngest to get out of death row at 35. And so he's not a writer, but he has a fascinating story, and his story inspired Just Mercy. And so, yeah, it's not so much about the writing, I have to say. It's really about the story and how you package yourself, because it's all about marketing with these publishers, right? They're really good at distribution channels, and they want you to do all the marketing work. So we help writers not only teach them how to write, but teach them how to market themselves and how to package themselves in their book proposal as best as possible. So the publisher says, you know what, we're going to roll the dice on this book because we think that that person has a big audience and he knows his market really well. He knows who he's talking to. So that is one thing I have to say, because so many years I was focused on learning how to write. And now that I'm going through the editorial process with my publishers, like, just speak the way you spoke when you were a kid. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes things so much easier, because I can put the Spanglish in there. And now all those years of writing was really, really great. But if I would have known that sooner, I wouldn't spend so much learning how to write, but more of the business side of publishing than anything.
Yes, that's very important. So my last question, share with us like one tip, one life lesson that, you know, really helped you and you think that can help teens and women everywhere. You know, what did you learn that you would like to pass on?
Yes, that is a great question, because I live by this. This question is a really good one. And for me, it's a mantra more than anything. There is a quote that says, success is to be measured not so much by the position, it's very lengthy, by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles they've overcome. And I think that kind of encompasses like my journey, but also my book. But that I've carried on through my whole life, as far as like, it's not about getting number one. It's not about, you know, going to the Olympics. It's not about reaching the top. It really is about the process and using those things as lessons to propel you forward. And you know, all those people that says you can't do it, I think, you know, hopefully it doesn't make one feel, what's the word? Like, for example, you know, when you're young, I feel like a lot of young adults, their identity is so close to them that if someone tells them, you know, you can't do it, they might say, well, this person who's an authority says I can't do it. And I don't like that, because I don't like that people would say that to even a young person, a young child. And I think that happened a lot growing up, because I'm a girl, because of this and all that stuff. And looking back, I think for me, it was like the willingness to give it my best, even if I didn't, you know, I wasn't number one in the US. And that is something that no one can take from you ever. And I think that's the most important lesson out of all this is that, you know, even though you might not get number one, it's the willingness to try, and no one can take that away from you, because at least you give it your best. You know, these people say you can't do it. Where are they now? Where are they?
Yes.
Not doing what you're doing. So I think that is something that I would carry. And if I was talking to my younger self, I would say that, like, don't listen to these people. For whatever reason, they say those things, but I think maybe they think that that you can't do it because no one's done it, but why can't you be the first? So that's how I would end that with that. Thank you.
That's a very beautiful mantra. Thank you for sharing it. And thank you for being with us and celebrating, you know, the The Las Comadres and Friends Book Club is 15 years old. We are celebrating our quinceañero, and we're happy to celebrate your success as well. So thank you for being with us. And we're going to upload this mini interview to our YouTube channel so that everyone can watch it and be inspired by you and be cheering you on and looking for your book in the beginning of the year.
Yes, I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye.